nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. So here we go again. Dublin and Mayo in an All-Ireland semi-final. Dublin and Mayo in the final four of the All-Ireland series. Dublin and Mayo once again in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. It's the 10th episode in the saga between Dublin and Mayo. Well, actually, as a matter of fact, you could say it's the 11th episode if you want to go back as far back as 2006. And Dublin and Mayo, I mean, look, listen, these two, they know each other very, very well. I mean, they've played each other every year, barring 2014 and 2018, going back since 2012. 10 of those meetings, like I was just saying, have been since 2012. We've seen one Mayo victory, which was the first game of those 10 back in 2012. We've seen 2 draws, and we have seen 7 Dublin victories. And, most of those victories have been in All-Ireland finals. A lot of them have been in semi-finals. A lot of them have been in replays. There's been drama, sending-offs, own goals, penalties, all sorts of drama between Dublin and Mayo down the years. We've seen some top-class forward play, and we've seen a lot of drama, circumstances, mistakes, absolutely everything between Dublin and Mayo. And of course, as always, I'm here to break down the game. I'm here to give my preview on GAA Fan TV. And if you are new around here, hit the like button and subscribe. My name is Aaron, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. My name is Aaron, and this is the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-final preview between Dublin and Mayo. Once again, Dublin and Mayo facing off against each other in the last 4 of the All-Ireland series, and it is the only game happening this weekend in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. Obviously, the Tyrone and Kerry game has been pushed back a week because of COVID-related circumstances. Tyrone have had a number of close contacts in their senior panel, and obviously they have a few players with COVID as well. I don't know the whole ins and outs of the whole story, but Tyrone have had to push that game back by a week, and the game will take place the following week, of course, next weekend, and the All-Ireland final actually being pushed back to September 4th. I suppose first of all, obviously not happy to see that the game has been pushed back. I mean, disappointed for the fact we only get one game this weekend, and certainly just an interesting point. Sligo last year, when they couldn't finish a game in the All-Ireland Championship, they were said the championship must go on, and that's just how it is. Seems that this year, have they made different circumstances, or are they making other circumstances for some of the bigger counties? I mean, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Personally, I think that at the end of the day, the All-Ireland semi-finals, finals, and the big games are what is going to make the GAA money, and it's what people want to see. With all due respect, unfortunately, the Sligo and Galway game last year wasn't going to generate nowhere near as much money as what it would for the GAA in this All-Ireland semi-final. I can't even remember if the Sligo-Galway game was on TV. There was obviously no tickets back then as well. The whole championship was played behind closed doors. And I think realistically everyone knew that Galway was going to beat Sligo. Now, is that fair on Sligo? Let me know down in the comments below. Certainly, you make one rules for one county and one rules for another, or one rules for one set of counties and one set of rules for another. I'm not sure, but look, listen, that's a debate for another day, and obviously we are here for the Dublin and Mayo preview. Now, there is an under-20 final that's happening as well between Roscommon and Offaly, and we will be discussing that briefly towards the end of the video, but for now, let's focus in on Dublin and Mayo in this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-final. Huge game, massive game for both counties, and certainly coming into the game, I think a lot of Mayo fans are coming into this with a bit of confidence. I think, Dublin certainly so far this year, even as a Dublin fan myself, haven't looked anywhere near their best in the Leinster Championship. Now, it can be an interesting one with Dublin. It's not the first time they've come through Leinster Championships without looking at their absolute best. There's times in the past before where they haven't looked brilliant. 2019, actually, in particular, they looked a little bit flat coming through Leinster. I think back in 2016 or one of those years, they looked a little flat at different stages as well. Now, they were still able to rack up big point victories, like for example in the 2019 final against Meath, they scored 119 but only conceded 4 points, so it was a huge victory. But actually, if you go back and watch that game in the first half, it was a mental game. I don't even think anyone scored after 10 or 15 minutes. It was something crazy. And both sides were just shutting each other out defensively, but eventually Dublin did get the better and won the game quite comfortably. So it hasn't always been the case that Dublin have been this poor in the Leinster Championship, but so far this year there definitely is a lot of question marks. Obviously the players aren't there coming off the bench for Dublin. You've got Colin Baskell and Ryan Baskell who's been coming off the bench. Will they have the same impact as what Dublin had in the All-Ireland final last year when Paul Mannion and Brian Howard came off the bench? Cormac Costello came off the bench in that game. Brian Howard and Cormac Costello very likely to start in this game. And of course, Paul Mannion has obviously opted out as well. And certainly when you look through Mayo's form so far in the Championship, I mean, obviously they play two lower ranked sides in Division 4 teams in Leitrim and Sligo and bet them to the 4. Came in against Galway, and I think the way that Mayo turned around that second half against Galway will certainly give Mayo fans a lot of confidence. The likes of your Ryan O'Donoghue, Tommy Conroy, who were both absolutely tremendous in that game, really stepping to the fore. And that was really huge for Mayo, because it was the first time really all year that they faced a Division 1 team. It was a massive test, and obviously they turned it around with flying colours. A huge victory, winning that game by 2-14 to 2-8. And certainly for Mayo fans, it would give them a lot of confidence going into this game. And actually what we're going to do now is, you'll see here on screen now, we've got just a website loaded up here called tacticalboard.com, and we're actually just going to look at the matchups, look at the potential lineups, and discuss some big talking points and what could potentially happen throughout the game. Now, I do bear in mind this is the best website I could find for this, and this is actually a rugby pitch here. Unfortunately, they don't have the same graphic for Gaelic games, but certainly maybe if anyone at tacticalboard.com is listening, maybe that will be something for you to do, or something to spend your spare time on. But and yeah, I understand that this isn't the best graphic in the world here, but it was the best way to show both teams on the pitch at the same time. So these are the teams that I think will line up in this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-final. Now, Padraig O'Hara, as we can see here in at number 3, I mean, he could have a potential injury. He suffered a rib injury in the Galway game, so it's not guaranteed that he starts. I would say that he could be the most important player for Mayo on the pitch in this game. And you might say, well, why is that the case? Well, last year, Oisin Mullen was in here at number 3, Mark and Con O'Callaghan. And if you actually remember, if you go back and watch the game, Con O'Callaghan, man of the match, got himself a goal, kicking brilliant points as well. And his influence in the game was unbelievable for Dublin. I mean, he was the man. He was the man of the match, and certainly was well deserved of winning as All-Star, and was one of the best players on the pitch in that game. I mean, it wasn't just his influence on the ball or his goals, but like even at different times as well, like he took up positions, he dragged himself back out here, and what would happen is Oisin Mullen would follow him everywhere he went. And even like, I can't get it up on screen here now, but if you go back and watch that opening goal in the All-Ireland final last year between Dublin and Mayo, like obviously James McCarthy wins the throw-in, offloads it onto Noel Scully. He gives it back to James McCarthy, who drives straight through the middle. There's open space, there's no one near him. He fists it into Dean Rock, who's on his left-hand side, and he fists it into the back of the net. And actually what happened was, if you go back and watch that throw-in, you won't see Con O'Callaghan and you won't see Oisin Mullen anywhere. And that was because Con O'Callaghan, as soon as the ball was thrown in, actually pushed himself way up here, and Oisin Mullen ended up chasing him. And what that actually happened is it created all this space in here for the Dublin players to run through. And it was actually a very well thought of tactic by the Dubs and by Desi Farrell. Now I'm sure Mayo will be a lot more wide to it this time around. We'll drag Padraig O'Hara back in here, and we'll drag Con O'Callaghan just back down here. But so certainly this could be a very interesting matchup, and Padraig O'Hara for me done a very good job against Galway. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, in particular in the second half. Got some really good blocks in at different stages as well. And this like round here in particular, in my opinion, could certainly be concern. This area of the pitch here for me, for Mayo, could certainly be an issue, because we've seen before that Rob Hennelly is quite vulnerable under a high ball. We've seen it in the Galway game where Damien Comer leaped in front of Robert Hennelly, got a flick on the ball, and ended up hitting the crossbar, I believe, and bounced back out. It was actually Shane Walsh who was going for a point, and it just looped in. Damien Comer got a flick ahead of Rob Hennelly. Seen in the Clare game as well, long ball was floated in. Darren O'Neill got ahead of Robert Hennelly, punched it out of his hands into the back of the net. And, we've seen against the Dubs in the past as well, he's made a few errors. So this could be a very interesting sort of situation here. And we could see potentially the likes of your Kieran Kilkenny, Niall Scully, even floating long balls into Con O'Callaghan. It definitely could be something that could definitely happen. I mean, floating long balls in here. Maybe even Brian Howard could float a long ball in. Paddy Small maybe as well into Con O'Callaghan, and it definitely could create a couple of scenarios where if Con can win that ball ahead of Padraig O'Hara and potentially ahead of Robert Hennelly, it could create all sorts of space in there for Dublin, and that could be an area of the pitch where Dublin really, really do hurt Mayo and potentially, win the game. And you'll notice if we have a look through the teams here, I mean, you'll see that Kevin McLaughlin, I've put him in there. I think he'd be a great star for Mayo in this game. I think he's very experienced. You need as many experienced players on the pitch in this game, in my opinion, because you don't have Killian O'Connor in there. You've had a number of retirements last year as well. There will be a lot of inexperience on the pitch, certainly from a Mayo perspective, and certainly to have someone like Kevin McLaughlin, I think would be very bright. And I thought he was fantastic when he came off the bench against Galway, kicked a brilliant point in that game as well. And Owen McLaughlin at number 7 could really be a big influence in this game. Very impressive last year. Came off the bench against Galway as well and certainly made an impact. So he could be a star. And it will be interesting to see whether we do see these Mayo wing-backs like Paddy Durkin and Owen McLaughlin venture forward here. It obviously would leave spaces for Niall Scully and Paddy Small, but certainly you would expect Paddy Small and Niall Scully to track both the likes of Paddy Durkin and Owen McLaughlin, and that will make another very interesting dimension to this game. Now, looking at Mayo in terms of how that they could potentially hurt Dublin and potentially beat Dublin, I think Ryan O'Donoghue's influence in this game could be crucial. Now, last year he actually played at 11, but he found himself in this pocket of space here a lot of the time, and he was going up. James McCarthy at different stages was having to track Ryan O'Donoghue, and Ryan O'Donoghue was having a really, really good game actually in that position. And certainly Mayo or Dublin were struggling in the first half to really deal with the threat of Ryan O'Donoghue. And whether he potentially goes in here and maybe Aidan O'Shea goes in here, I mean, that'll be an interesting one as well, because Ryan O'Donoghue did cause a lot of problems and has been very impressive so far this year. Against Galway, he was playing in this position in the second half and caused all sorts of problems. At one stage ran through, put the ball on the back of the net, and obviously the goal was disallowed late on. So that could be a very, very intriguing battle. Will we see Davy Byrne going up against Aaron McHale, or will he stick Aidan O'Shea in there? Like a lot of interesting question marks. He played Aidan O'Shea at 11 against Galway, and Aidan O'Shea was actually dropping a lot more deeper in the second half to get more of the ball, so that could be an interesting one. Tommy Conroy is another very explosive player, and he was picking up pockets of space here a lot of the time against Galway, driving straight at that Dublin defence, and that could really cause all sorts of problems for this Dublin side as well. And you'll notice the Dublin defence, some of the players I've picked here. Owen Merchant, I think, is absolutely he's essential for this Dublin side, in my opinion. He came off the bench against Kildare. He's obviously coming back from an injury. John Small, the same as well. Could it be too early for both John Small and Owen Merchant to both start in this game? I mean, John Small started against Kildare, but maybe was Desi looking at it and thinking, we're saving him for an All-Ireland final? I don't really know, but I think with John Small and Owen Merchant, I think you got to start these two in this game. Like, this is a big game, and this isn't like the Leinster Championship. I think Dublin could potentially lose this game. So I think for both of these two to start, I think it's of huge importance, in my opinion. And I do think the main reason being is because Owen Merchant, he's so brilliant on the ball. He slows the game down. He picks out the likes of Brian Fenton and whoever's in front of him, whether it be McCarthy or Brian Howard, and he does get forward as well, and he offers that outlet. We obviously seen that goal against Kerry where he drove the whole way straight through the middle and took about 17 steps in the process. We all know that, but I mean, he's a big influence, and he could just offer that something different for Dublin going forward that they just don't have at the moment, since Jack McCaffrey obviously stepped away. And you would feel that James McCarthy would be focused mainly on what's going on behind them. But whether he maybe goes into midfield and maybe Brian Howard, maybe Brian Howard goes in here, it's going to be interesting. But James McCarthy could certainly have a big influence on this game. He was of crucial importance in the game last year. Won the throw-in, of course, like I said, played it into Noel Scully and eventually worked it onto Dean Rock. Another player who needs to have a big game, in my opinion, for Dublin is Dean Rock. As I was just saying, last year got a very important goal against Mayo, was in tip-top form last year, certainly so far this year. A little bit rusty against Meath in that game, and of course against Kildare as well. Not a little bit better, but not to his usual standards. So he's another one worth keeping an eye on. Whether Lee Keegan actually starts here, because Lee Keegan actually played at 2 in the last game versus Galway, so we could see maybe Lee Keegan going up against Dean Rock and Michael Plunkett going up against Cormac Costello. Midfield, I mean, another very interesting one. You know, Matthew Rowan, Brian Fenton, two of the best midfielders in the game, without doubt. And so far, Matthew Rowan has been absolutely exceptional for Galway, or for Mayo, I should say. He was exceptional against Galway. Like, that goal he scored as well, where he just drove through the middle. I mean, it was this sort of pocket of space that he drove into, just straight through the middle here, and ended up comfortably, dispatching it in the back of the net. And could we see a situation where Matthew Rowan gets into these positions again to potentially cause more problems for some of the Dublin defenders? I mean, it is certainly one worth considering. Now, another matchup worth highlighting is Tommy Conroy going up against Sean McMahon, potentially. Now, we'll see what happens, obviously, on the day, but I mean, Sean McMahon's obviously come into the side this year, obviously, with some of the recent retirements, and with the fact that Dublin have had a couple of injuries, and it's allowed a couple of spaces for players to come into the team. And Sean McMahon has come into the team, and he's been okay so far, like impressive enough in the league, keeps it very simple, keeps the ball, doesn't do anything over the top or anything like that. He isn't a cornerback that's going to burst forward and kick you 2 or 3 points. He isn't like the Kerry or even some of the Mayo cornerbacks that burst forward at different stages. He generally stays in his kind of same position throughout the game. Maybe he might pop up here at different stages as well, and that could certainly be an influence. But Tommy Conroy, as we know, such a hard player to keep a hold of, and you would wonder, could Mick Fitzsimons maybe go on him, and maybe there's some reshuffling there. It's going to be very, very intriguing. It really, really is. And Tommy Conroy has been in unbelievable form for Mayo recently, and this year in particular, like just really coming of age. Like in the Galway game, like I said, he was picking up pockets of spaces around here, driving straight through, and that's one of the things that Tommy Conroy is most impressive with, is beating 2 or 3 players, getting in and around them, creating extra spaces for the likes of whether it's Darren McHale, Aidan O'Shea, Ryan O'Donoghue, and it definitely could make a big impact in the game. Now, the kick-out strategy of both Dublin and Mayo is certainly going to be one worth keeping an eye on, and we're using a rugby ball here for this graphic, but Evan Comerford obviously coming into the team this year, as we very well know. Stephen Cluxton not available. I mean, could Stephen Cluxton make a surprise appearance for this game? It probably wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he just came back for this game and just wanted to play the 2 All-Ireland or the 2 All-Ireland games, the semi-final and final, provided Dublin come through Mayo. But Evan Comerford, look, listen, he's been alright so far. He's kept it simple. He went short a lot of the time against Kildare, struggled just a little bit in the second half against Meath. But this is really now where we'll start to see what Evan Comerford is made of, because we seen last year actually in the final where Mayo did press up quite high on Dublin's kickouts, and it did create Mayo were turning the ball over. Conor Loftus, Matthew Rowan were winning a couple of balls. Paddy Durkin was winning ball as well. Oisin Mullen was dropping in around here at different stages for the kickouts and actually winning ball ahead of Conor O'Callaghan. So Mayo are actually doing quite well, and that could be an area where Mayo potentially go and win the game, is really pressing up on the kickouts and Dublin, forcing Dublin long, because we've seen Stephen Cluxton can do that. He's brilliant at picking out men, but Evan Comerford, will he be able, under the pressure, to pick out maybe the likes of Owen Merchant, who might be a player here, or James McCarthy, who's a usual target, or will he just drive it long into the midfield? It certainly will be an interesting one as well. And Dublin, as we know, they like to press as well, and they'll certainly get in the faces of Robert Henley and look to put him under a bit of pressure. But Henley, I have been impressed with his kick out so far. Like I said, he's been a little bit vulnerable under a high ball, and I think he has been, but I think under his kickouts, I think he's been impressive so far. He was very good against Galway, brilliant, at going long, picking out the likes of Matthew Rowan, or even going longer than that, Kevin McLaughlin maybe dropping in, Aidan O'Shea maybe dropping in around here. So I do think that Henley will probably be forced to go long as well. Whether Lee Keegan peels away and he goes short, it will be interesting, but it's going to be an intriguing battle nonetheless. And certainly, like in terms of who I kind of fancy to get the better, I think Dublin will get a little bit more joy here, in my opinion. But maybe with the fact that Evan Comerford is newly coming into the side, and obviously the first time he's playing against Mayo in the championship, could certainly have a huge impact in the way that this game is played. So ultimately, in terms of my prediction, look, listen, I do think Dublin will get the better of Mayo in this game. And look, listen, I know Dublin haven't been at their scintillating best so far this year in the championship, and there are a lot of question marks over Dublin, and it probably is likely that Dublin are coming to an end of an era, and maybe Kerry will be the team to stop them. Maybe even Mayo might prove me wrong and get the better of Dublin, but I don't think it will be Mayo. And the main reason why I think Dublin will get over the line here is I think they're too seasoned. They've too much experience all across the pitch, and they do, like, their starting 15 is still top class. Like, you're talking about players that have never lost a championship game. You're talking about all-star winners. You're talking about footballers of the year. Brian Fenton, exceptional footballer altogether, two-time footballer of the year. I mean, I just think he's going to step up to the occasion. I think Con O'Callaghan, who certainly hasn't looked at his absolute best so far this year, I'm expecting him to have a big game. He usually has a big game against Mayo. You think back to the 2017 final when he scored a goal quite early on. He was obviously brilliant last year as well. 2019, he was brilliant against Mayo in particular in the second half. So I do expect these Dublin players to step up. James McCarthy, I think, will be more at his best, and I feel like Dublin might come into this game and want to prove a point, prove that all this negative publicity maybe that people are saying, oh, maybe they're finished, maybe they're this, maybe they're that. I still think that they have plenty of talent all across the pitch from their starting 15, and I think they'll want to go out there, make a statement, prove people wrong, and really kind of showcase that they still are the All-Ireland winners. They've won 6 All-Irelands in a row. No reason why they can't win a 7th. Well, obviously Kerry are still in there, but I mean, certainly from a Dublin point of view, I just expect them to step up and produce a big performance in this game. And like, from matching Dublin and Mayo up against each other, I just feel that Dublin, they will just have more experience. And I think whilst Mayo have a very explosive full forward line of Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, Aidan O'Shea will probably be dropping into pockets of space to collect the ball. And you'll have maybe your wing backs pushing forward as well. But I do think that Dublin's defence will hold up. I think Mick Fitzsimons was phenomenal last year against Mayo. I think Davy Byrne, whilst he struggled at different stages against Kildare and probably hasn't had his best championship so far, I think is a very good defender. Sean McMahon keeps it simple. If Owen Merchant and John Small come back into the side, like I said before, I think they'll have a big impact. So I think Dublin's defence will be better than Mayo's defence as well. Like, you're looking at Mayo's defence, there is still inexperience in there. Like, Padraig O'Hara, will he start? That's a big question mark. Will he maybe go with Enda Hessian? And like what I said before, I do expect Mayo's defence to have problems. Like, you look at Mayo so far this year, they conceded 2-18 against Clare. In the first half against Galway caused them all sorts of problems as well. So I just don't see how Con O'Callaghan, Dean Rock, Cormac Costello aren't going to create problems for that Mayo defence, aren't going to get in behind and score goals. So I think they will be critical factors in Dublin getting this victory. So yeah, I'm going to go with a 5-point victory for Dublin. I could be wrong. I'll actually put a graphic on screen of my score prediction. I'm going all out for this prediction. Look at this. But yeah, I do think Dublin will win the game by 5 points. That's generally been, I'd say, the average for Dublin down the years in these victories. I know there's been a couple of 1-point victories, but generally 4 or 5 points I think is the average in these sort of games. So I'm going to go with Dublin to get the victory by 5 points. Going down the home stretch, Mayo coming off the bench, it could be a problem, and maybe that could be a big difference for Mayo, but I do think Dublin will have too much for Mayo on this occasion. We then have the under-20 football final that's happening on Sunday between Roscommon and Offaly, and obviously this game is getting its own day as such. Obviously the Kerry and Tyrone game not happening anymore, so this game will be happening in Croke Park as a standalone event on the Sunday rather than a prequel to the Kerry and Tyrone game, which is probably better for Offaly and Roscommon fans, means more tickets probably available for them. So it's probably worked out quite nicely for both of them, and a huge day for both Offaly and Roscommon. Offaly haven't won the under-20 All-Ireland since 1988. Roscommon haven't won the under-20 All-Ireland since 1978. So I mean, this will be there'll be a huge celebration somewhere when the final whistle blows between these two counties. One of these counties will get their hands on the under-20 football All-Ireland for the first time in quite a long time. I mean, first of all, speaking about Offaly, I mean, they have been super impressive. I certainly didn't see it coming myself. Like beating Dublin, beating Cork. I mean, you're talking about two teams that I know Dublin don't have the same players that were in their under 20 All Ireland final last year. Kieran Archer isn't there, Lee Gannon isn't there. But to go and beat them is still very, very impressive. And then go and beat a Cork side that I think a lot of people fancy to go on and win the All Ireland. When you looked at Conor Corbett coming through, who wasn't available in that game, but Offaly have been very, very impressive. Jack Bryant, I mean, very dynamic, explosive forward, modern day forward, really good at getting forward, probably maybe in contention for being the under 20 footballer of the year. He's been absolutely brilliant for Offaly, in my opinion. And I suppose for Roscommon, getting that victory over Down, really digging deep. They were 2 points down at half time, creating a number of goal chances actually in that game against Down. Like James Fitzpatrick in particular. I mean, that goal was incredible stuff, really. Brilliant bit of link play, got on the ball, put it to the left hand top corner of the goalkeeper, or the right hand top corner of the Down goalkeeper. And fair play to Roscommon as well, getting through that Connacht Championship as well, which is always very competitive, getting through. I believe it was Mayo that they beat in the final as well, which was obviously a huge victory for Roscommon. So I think Roscommon are coming in good nick. Galway obviously won the under 20 football championship last year. Mayo beat Galway this year, and then Roscommon beat Mayo. Is that anything to go off? I'm not sure, but I think Offaly, in my opinion, I think they're going to win this game, because to come through Dublin and Cork, I haven't seen a whole lot of Offaly at under 20 level, but from what I have seen, been very, very impressive. Cormac Egan as well, brilliant at holding the ball, just a really well coached team, brilliant at holding the ball, creating the extra bit of space as well, getting their wing backs forward at different stages, and even as well, actually, their fullback, Tom Hyland, I think he's been impressive as well. I think he's done a very good job going up against Cork and Dublin, keeping their scores down as well. So, I think Offaly are going to win the game by 3 or 4 points. I think they've been very impressive so far this year. And Honda Faithful, I think it'll be a huge result for Offaly football. But anyway, lads, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this kind of content, let me know down in the comments below. There will be a ladies football semi-final preview. That'll be out later in the week. I'll have Bridstack on the show, actually, as a matter of fact, and we'll be running through both ladies football semi-finals taking place this weekend. Dublin are playing Mayo and Meath are taking on Cork. So do stay tuned for that, and do stay tuned for more videos, podcasts coming soon, and I'll see you all in the next one.